Good morning, everyone. So I've known Sean for a while now. I've actually met him at an event a while ago when he was reverse pitching Profounders Capital to a room of entrepreneurs. And he's actually amongst one of my favorite investors, as over the years, the startups that I actually introduced to him came back to me highlighting the amazing feedback that he would give back to them, even at the times when he didn't end up investing in some of the companies. So I guess they're not called pro-founders for nothing after all, are they? So recently, and actually accidentally, I found out that they invested in Leap Motion and an amplifier. So I really wanted to hear more about how they see the space and what made them bet on XR back in the days. With over 50 investments, and I think Sean, you're going to give us a bit more insights into that. 14 exits. You folks have been backing early stage startups since 2009, focusing on disruptive models that leverage technology to transform and improve customer experience. It's a pleasure to have you here today, Sean. Would you give us a quick intro to yourself and Profounders Capital before we dive into all things XR?
Excellent. Hi, Yulia. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Honestly, I couldn't have paid you any more to do it any better. So it's very kind. And yes, I've appreciated conversations we've had, and of course the company introductions that you've made. And it's an unfortunate byproduct of our job is we say no a lot to businesses. We only say yes to, honestly, it's 1 in every 100 or 150. And so we have to be, respectful of founders' time. We have to, be courteous. And we also know we get it wrong a lot. My gosh, our list of companies we didn't invest into is so painful to look at sometimes. And there's always kind of a new one that pops up. But as long as we get enough interesting, exciting businesses, then it all works out. Very quickly on Profounders, because it's the less exciting stuff. We're based here in London, investing across Greater Europe into early stage digital businesses. We invest into the first institutional rounds. And what that means is we write investment checks anywhere from €500,000 up to €2.5 million into companies usually raising 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 million euros. And our investment thesis is quite simple. We want to invest into companies that fix broken customer experiences. So every business that we meet, we try to understand how they use technology to make faster or better or cheaper or easier, something that is hard or painful for consumers to do, or for businesses to do as well. And that crosses many sectors, e-commerce through to marketplaces, software, games, XR, VR, whatever you want to call it. We have our toes dipped into a lot of different little ponds, but this is definitely one of them. And what's most exciting probably about this, which is also what's been the toughest about it, is generational change, generational platforms, by their nature only come once in a generation. So if you go back in time, the semiconductor was a big shift. The personal computer was a big shift. The internet 20 years ago, 25 years ago was a big shift. Mobile, 10 years ago was a big shift. And we're always looking for the next one. And I think what's got everyone excited on the investment world is XR the next one. The downside is that we've been saying that for 6 or 7 years now. And so therein lies the conundrum a little bit. But I've kind of jumped into a bunch of different things. But it's a pleasure to be here.
I mean, we are going to go back to a decade ago, right? Because that's when you folks invested in Leap Motion and Amplify. And I guess on my side, back in the days, XR was still like completely new, right? And even now, like investors are still reluctant, like very often to invest in this type of companies. So I guess my question, like the first question for you, is what made you make that bet like 10 years ago?
Yeah, and it turned out to not necessarily work out, right? It's been hard and it's been long in the space. It's the promise. Again, it's the promise of, in that case specifically, sort of the VR immersive space. And we looked at it. We said this is a different paradigm. It's a different opportunity. When there are new opportunities, new paradigms, there's opportunities for outsized returns. So what everyone's looking for in venture capital is the chance not to make 3 to 4 times your money, but 100 to 200 times your money. And with that, you need new things where you can pioneer into a new space. You can be the global market leader starting as a very small business. And so these new product opportunities are what got people excited. And so when we first met the Leap Motion team, which is all about gesture recognition, it was quite simple, right? I'm not going to overplay our investment thesis. We thought, isn't that really
All right.
Cool. We invest alongside Intel Capital. So we sort of said, okay, great. They'll do the technical diligence because we clearly can't do that. And they were able to get some comfort on that side. But then, what we got wrong in that case was the timing, right? Things just took much longer than anyone expected, and that's always the downside over the last few years. Is when will the platform be there? When will distribution be in place?
And at that point, because obviously you invested in those two, but have you looked at other companies in the space? And I guess, like, what made you invest in those particular two compared to the others, if you had?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, every year we meet a lot of different companies that are touching the XR space, right? And I must say it ebbs and flows as far as what we see within it. So for a long time, it was all about gaming and VR, and everyone was building either immersive experiences, go sit on the beach in VR, or kind of action games, whatever it might be. And then it moved much more towards sort of training programs, right? Prototyping, training, more B2B style experiences. And then more recently, it's starting to move back a little bit more towards the gaming side. And that's purely a function of the fact that finally, with the Quest 2, we have the belief that there will be a platform out there, right? And there will be product out there that people can use as consumers. So it feels like we're finally getting there, right? And actually, as I've been listening to the pitches here this morning, I've been fascinated because I did look at all of them, but the ones that have spoken, it's much more still, right? Generally speaking, in the picks and shovels, kind of the tools, sets, and so forth, right? How do we actually make the experiences just much better? And you can understand why, because actually for the content side to work, you need to have the platform and the tools in place. And so, with this next generation of kind of tools in place, we'll be able to build the great content on top of it, I believe.
Definitely. And I mean, I think also what we see in Europe versus the US, for example, is that there are a lot more, I guess, so like kind of startups in the B2B space rather than consumer. However, as you pointed out, especially because of COVID, we could see a lot more adoption on the consumer side finally. So, probably the time for XR is now. I think where do you see I guess the differences between Europe and the immersive space here versus I mean the US, Asia, and so on?
Yeah, it's listen, I think generally speaking, the world is getting flatter. And this is across all of the entrepreneurial world, right? Founders read the same blogs, they follow the same people on Twitter. So there's not a huge amount of difference. If you think about what Europe could bring to the table, though, there's a few things. And this is generally speaking about founders, but then also about the space as well, right? So I think without a doubt, Europe has been one of the global leaders in the games and content side, right? And you go back 30 years ago with its Codemasters building games in the UK, or even in the last 10 years with, if you think about global leaders, whether it's Minecraft or Supercell, we're investors in Small Giant Games. It was bought for about $1 billion. There have been absolute King with Candy Crush. The gaming, the content side, Europe creates the best businesses out there. And so what you've got talent now that has had experience in building games and building the viral loops that you need, et cetera. So I think now is the time for actually Europe to create companies in that space, because there's just the depth of talent to be able to do it. There's the experience, there's the capital, et cetera. So I think we'll see quite a bit of that. But listen, I'm not going to downplay some of the others, right? Vario, who I think is speaking later, who would have thought that someone would dare to compete with Oculus, dare to compete with some of the Asian manufacturers to build headsets themselves, and a company that comes out of Finland, right? That's so cool. And that speaks, to what else Europe had, and this is especially Finland. What we love about Finland, Finland had a very big company that was building mobile phones hardware for a very long time, and it didn't work out. And so you have a huge amount of talent from that space that kind of spilled out to the market. And I'm not sure, what percentage of the people at Vario come from Nokia, but I guarantee they've got some people that had some deep experience building there as well. So, that, and then lastly, just to add as well, and this is both a positive and a negative to Europe, is that it's incredibly diverse, languages, cultures, et cetera. So if you think a lot about the B2B things, Americans are going to build for the American market in English only, right? And what you're not going to have is someone that says, actually, you know what? We understand that in German Mittelstand companies, there's an opportunity for XR training programs that teach them how to make the VW slightly better. And that'll be local companies building for those local markets as well. And so that just won't be touched by the US folks.
That makes total sense. And I guess sort of like kind of following up on that, where do you see the trends in XR like over the next, I don't know, few years? Especially Europe more so than the US.
Listen, I mean, I'm going to probably try to keep it more high level than dive in per se, because truthfully, we're led by the founders more so than it's our job to determine it, right? Founders are the ones that are in there kind of specifically in the area, identifying problems, coming up with solutions, and they come and tell us, and then we look smart by repeating back exactly what they tell us. It's a unique skill set of an investor to be able to kind of beg, borrow, and steal from very smart people. But like many businesses, COVID-19 is going to have a sort of a catapult effect in this space, right? And it's because I think for a long time, right? We're investors in travel companies. They're down 98%, and it's not coming back. We all thought, okay, this is going to be a 6-month thing. Guess what? It's going to be a multi-year thing, and we're getting much more accustomed to technologies, right? I mean, Zoom it's a freaking terrible experience, yet we're all kind of okay with it at this point. So imagine what happens when we get a good VR experience to be able to video conference with people, right? And training, right? Even surgeons that need training can't go into a hospital anymore. So there's perfect examples of these B2B use cases out there. And so I think it's going to, if you remember the charts about e-commerce penetration, it was a kind of 20%, and then there's a step change to 35% immediately during this time. And I think given the low base that XR starts in, we're going to see that sort of transformational impact where we're going to go from 1% experience now to 15% experience. And so what we're excited about is the fact that, like again, coming back, these inflection points don't happen that often, right? This is a once in a decade sort of thing that we believe we're now entering. And that creates an exciting investment opportunity finally as investors, because where we get it wrong a lot as investors is we get it kind of right in the long term, but wrong in the short term. And what I mean by that is our job is to make money. We fund companies so they can prove something over the next 18 months to be able to go raise money again. And the problem in VR, let's say, for the last 10 years, is that people get excited, they fund a company, and you have to sit around and wait years and years and years. They never have traction. And so they would run out of money and run out of time before they actually generated the traction, the proof points. I think as an investor, you can go into it now and say, actually, you know what? It's there. It's there. This is going to be happening. On the B2B side, companies are going to be open to prototyping, to training, to conferencing, whatever it might be. And on the consumer side, it's happening. My son is 12 years old. He has been desperately trying to get the latest Xbox or PS5 or whatever it might be, and we haven't been able to get it happen yet. But he came up and asked the other day. He said, "Oh, a couple of my friends have got this Oculus thing. What do you think?" And so now we're considering it ourselves, right, internally. And I'm quite a notorious cheapskate. So if we're considering it here, and my son is excited about it, it's going to be happening.
Definitely. I mean, I was talking to one of the investor partners on the program the other day, and she was saying that, like, oh my God, you have to get this headset. Like, we have to go into this immersive games, because it's like it's a new way, or a different way of actually getting the opportunity to I guess even connect with other people at this point, right? We're all fed up with Zoom and phone calls and so on. So if I guess. Obviously, like on our side over the past 3 years, one of the things that we've tried to achieve with Augmentor was actually, sort of like kind of build that investment appetite. And we've done a great work with that, and we've seen more and more, I guess, like from the industry agnostic investors, or like kind of putting money into immersive companies. I guess both on the startup side and on the investor side, what would be a sort of like kind of piece of advice that you would give them?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think the good thing about anyone operating this space is that there's a level of excitement now in the investment community, right? People want to take the meeting, they want to hear about it. They'll have a young son or young daughter who's been talking about it, and so they're going to get excited about it. So that's a positive. I think the key thing in my mind, and this is actually for any company, is the key milestones that the business will be able to achieve. So having realistic milestones and having a fundraise that matches that. Again, what you have to do once you start on this venture capital treadmill, so what you're doing is you're raising capital, which allows you to supercharge the business. The downside of that is you're investing ahead of revenues generally coming through, you're burning money, and so you've got a limited time frame. You've got about 18 months usually to prove something meaningful, to be able to raise capital again. And so you have to be crystal clear and aligned with your investor about what the goals are, what you will achieve in the next 18 months. And if you find an investor that you're aligned with, where you agree on what the business should be able to achieve, that's great. Now, we understand things don't always go according to plan. There's hiccups, on a positive sense, negative sense. Some things will move a little bit faster, some will move slower. But you need to have a very credible cash usage plan. And understand exactly what you think you can achieve, and be kind of almost conservative about it, right? Don't overpromise, because then everyone's going to be disappointed with where things are. But again, I think the good news is it feels like the time is there. For the first time in a long time, it feels like it can happen. It can happen.
We hear a lot of that. Thanks a lot for the insight. Just before we're gonna wrap up, I guess my final question for you is where we're going to see the next Ultra Leap? Where's your bet on that one?
It's events like this, isn't it? That's what you told me, Julia. As I come here and I meet the next great company. That's no. I will be paying attention and listening to the rest of them. Honestly, I think again, that's the question for the founders, right? They are the ones that are putting their heart and soul into it, right? I spend 10% of my time in the space. They spend 100% of their time, deep within the space. And so my job is to make sure that I'm available and there. And again, I can learn from the founders that are here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that, Sean. We are running out of time.
Yes.
But it's been great to hear more about what you guys invest in, and obviously your appetite in immersive investment. We're going to head back to the pitches, but have a lovely day, and thanks a lot for the insight.
Thank you very much.